What would you do? If the only man willing to save your family was old enough to be your grandfather, would you marry him? Even if every part of your heart screamed no, would you betray your own dreams just to make sure your brother had dinner tonight and your father lived to see tomorrow? Or would you walk away and let everything fall apart? This isn't just a story about marriage. It's a story about sacrifice, identity, and a love that wore a mask. If you've ever had to choose survival over yourself, then this story is for you. Leave a comment. I sacrificed and no one ever knew. Subscribe to Tales of Black, where untold truths become unforgettable stories. Chapter 1. Wedding Night. A stranger walks out of the bathroom. Amaya sat frozen at the edge of the bed, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. In the grand, ivory-colored bedroom, everything felt foreign. From the cloud-soft mattress to the sheer curtains flowing like waterfalls. Tonight was her wedding night. She had just married the wealthiest man in the region, a man nearly 40 years older than her. The entire wedding day had passed like a slow, surreal dream. She wore a simple white gown, pure, modest. She bowed her head and said her vows amidst the chaotic cheers of villagers. She smiled, but her eyes did not. Because her heart did not belong to the man standing beside her. And now, night had fallen. And she had no idea what would happen next. Her husband had gone into the bathroom nearly an hour ago. The water was still running. She hadn't heard a single other sound. Her hands trembled. Sweat soaked her back. She had never been intimate with a man before. She didn't know what to do. She didn't love him, but she had promised to play the role of a wife. She didn't marry for love. She married to save her parents. A small noise broke the silence. The bathroom door handle turned slowly. Amaya jumped to her feet. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. The door creaked open. Steam spilled into the room like a thin veil of smoke. And the man who stepped out was not the old man she had married that morning. Standing before her was a young man. Tall, broad shoulders glistening with droplets of water, wet hair hanging over his forehead, a strong jawline, deep brown skin, eyes that seemed strangely familiar. He wore only a towel around his waist. No shirt, no explanation. Amaya was stunned. She took a step back, eyes locked on him. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice cracking with fear. The man didn't move closer. He simply raised both hands gently. A silent gesture. "Please, don't panic." "Amaya," he said, his voice calm and warm. "I'm your husband." A chill ran down her spine. No, that's not possible." She shook her head. "My husband he's an old man. Where is he? Where is Elijah?" The young man stayed perfectly still. There was no smirk on his face, no teasing, no sarcasm, only sincerity. "I am Elijah," he said, "the one who wrote to you, the one who came to marry you, the man you now call your husband." Heat rose to Amaya's cheeks. She turned toward the bedroom door, ready to flee, but her legs wouldn't move. She turned back, her voice breaking. "Are you playing some kind of sick joke? What is this? A scam? A performance? Where is he? I want to see Elijah." The man took a single step forward. "And then," he spoke slowly, "I've been by your side this whole time. You haven't been deceived, but there's something I need you to know. And I will tell you everything." She stepped back, trembling, tears welling in her eyes. The stranger, this man in front of her, let out a soft sigh. "Tonight, I won't touch you. I know you're afraid. But please, let me explain why things are the way they are." Amaya didn't respond. She stood there on her wedding night, not with the man she thought she had married, but with a truth she wasn't ready to face. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Inside her, a storm was rising, and like a film rewinding in slow motion, she would have to go back, all the way to the beginning, to discover who she had really married. Chapter 2. It began in the dark. Before she ever stepped foot into that dreamlike mansion, Amaya lived in a place where even dreaming had to ask for permission to exist. The village was called Adum, tucked deep within Ghana's red earth lands, where the sun could blister your skin by noon and the rains could wash away a roof made of stitched-up sackcloth by dusk. Their hut had no door, no bed, just a straw mat laid over bare ground, where 4 people slept side by side each night. Not for warmth of love, but because a single cold cough in the night could take an elder's life. Her father, Kojo, had once been a strong builder, but age, lung sickness, and years of labor under the sun had carved him hollow. Now he did odd jobs, fixing broken gates, hauling firewood, carrying water for neighbors. Her mother, Isi, sold vegetables at the local market, greens picked from a tiny patch behind the hut. Some days, rain soaked the leaves and no one would buy. Other days, the sun withered them, and customers bargained so hard she left with just enough coins for a pinch of salt. Her brother, Joshua, had dropped out of school at 15. Since then, he wandered from house to house begging for work. But no one wanted him. To them, a barefoot boy with no education, no connections, no shoes, was no different from a chair with a missing leg. And Amaya, she was the only one in the family still going to school. She walked there barefoot, wearing a uniform patched 8 times over. Her textbooks were hand-me-downs with wrinkled covers and missing pages. Lunch was a lump of dried porridge, made from leftover rice and salt. But she never missed a day, even when hunger blurred her vision, even when rain soaked her to the bone, even when classmates laughed at the smell of sweat and torn seams. She kept going, sat in the front row, raised her hand with the pride and brilliance no one could strip from her. Her father once told her, "They can take everything from you, but if you have knowledge, you still have a weapon." On the days she felt like giving up, she clung to those words. She thought of her father's cough, her mother's tired hands, her brother's silent eyes. She couldn't let life stay this way. Some nights, there was no dinner. Her father coughed blood. Her mother lay motionless. Joshua stared at the wall, saying nothing, and Amaya sat alone, in the dark, beside a half-melted candle, her hands trembling as she wrote on scrap paper, "I will leave, not to abandon my family, but to find a way back, with light." She didn't know where she was going, but she knew one thing. If she stayed, they would die. Not from war, but from poverty. Then, one scorching afternoon, the principal called her into his office. There was a letter on his desk, stamped in red. It had traveled over 300 kilometers to reach her. It read, "Congratulations, Amaya Kelechi. You have been awarded a full scholarship to the University of Ghana, Accra." She stood still. Tears fell before she even knew what kind they were. Joy? Shock? Gratitude? That evening, the entire village knew. Crowds gathered to see the girl with the scholarship. Some offered congratulations. Others whispered, "She'll leave and never return. Poverty is her destiny." But her mother held her close and whispered, "You are our flame. Go. I'll guard the wind so you can burn longer." 3 weeks later, Amaya left Adum. She carried a worn-out bag with a few clothes, a notebook, and a heart lined with scars. She didn't know what the capital city would be like, but she believed wherever the lights never went out, there would be a path for her. She left in silence. No send-off, no flowers, no fanfare. Just 3 figures standing in a field. Her father, her mother, and Joshua, waving until the bus disappeared down the road. Amaya didn't look back because she knew if she turned around, she might never have the strength to leave again. Chapter 3. A city that doesn't welcome the poor. Accra, the city of glass buildings, gleaming cars, and traffic lights that blink like a child's toy. Amaya stepped off the bus wearing worn-out sandals, clutching her canvas bag to her chest, eyes wide like a small bird lost in a forest of steel. Car exhaust, honking horns, the smell of old frying oil mixed with sweat and cheap perfume. It all hit her at once, making her head spin. She wasn't used to this speed. She wasn't used to people walking without looking at each other. She wasn't used to being surrounded by so many bodies, and yet feeling no warmth from any gaze. The student housing for low-income scholars sat on the edge of the city, a row of crumbling units with peeling paint, windows without glass, shared bathrooms. Her room had no bed, just a thin mattress laid flat on the floor. But at least, it didn't leak. And at least, no one there knew where she came from. The first few days of school were another kind of shock. Students dressed well. They spoke English like it was music. They arrived on motorbikes, typing on sleek laptops. And her? She scribbled notes with a used pen in a cheap exercise book. Her lunch was dry bread and tap water. Some days, just a roasted yam. She had no friends. No one wanted to sit beside the girl in second-hand clothes, the one who kept her head down, who didn't even know how to like the class rep's posts on Facebook. She had once heard that the city was where lives were transformed. But why did every door seem shut? Why did poverty cling to her like the smoke from her village's oil lamp? Every evening, she worked at a small restaurant, washing dishes, mopping floors, serving food. Then she'd return to her room and study late into the night. Many nights, her stomach ached from hunger. Tears would fall, quiet, without warning. But still she kept reading, because she knew. If she failed even one class, she'd lose her scholarship. One evening, it rained. She walked home soaking wet, clothes clinging to her skin, shivering from the cold. A car pulled up beside her. The window slid down. A man inside leaned over and asked, "Want a ride? I'll take you home." She saw the look in his eyes. She said nothing. She just turned and ran. Her sandals slipped off behind her, but she didn't stop. She knew the price of being poor in this city. If you're not careful, someone will try to buy your soul with a warm meal and a soft bed. But Amaya kept going. She kept studying. She kept working. She sent home what little money was left after rent. And each time a letter arrived from the village, she cried. "Your father's weaker now, but still trying," her mother wrote. "Joshua still hasn't found work. The garden crops failed this season. But don't worry, love. We're managing." She read that last line again and again. "We're managing." Lies. They were dying slowly. And she knew. If she didn't push herself every second of every day, she'd never be strong enough to return and save them. And it was in those darkest days that something began to bloom inside her. A new dream, not just to survive, but to change her fate. Chapter 4. The Men Who Left. Amaya wasn't just hungry for food. She hungered for something else. A hand to hold, a gentle look, a word that felt true. She had never dreamed of a prince on a white horse. But after all those years of loneliness, after the wind had swept through the hollow places of her heart, she began to long for something simple, a man who loved her. Not because she was beautiful, not because she was smart, but simply because she was herself. The first time she fell in love, it happened in the library. He was a law student, tall, soft-spoken, with kind eyes. He'd help her find books. Sometimes, he'd buy her an extra roll of bread for breakfast. She never said much. But inside her, something small, something fragile, began to flicker. Hope. One evening, they studied late together. He asked her, "Where's your home?" Amaya answered truthfully, "I'm from Adam. My family used to be homeless. There were nights we slept in an abandoned shack." His face changed, like someone had turned the light off behind his eyes. He went quiet. And from that day on, he stopped showing up. No more messages, no visits to the library, not even a passing hi. She stood outside class once, watching his back as he walked away, never turning around. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. The second time, it was a co-worker at the little restaurant where she worked evenings. He was a few years older, always cracking jokes, always offering to help wash the dishes. One rainy night, they stood together under a narrow awning. He handed her his damp jacket and said, "You're the strongest girl I've ever met." Amaya smiled. Her heart ached, but with a new kind of ache, the ache of beginning to believe. But then, he saw her at a corner shop one day, sending money back to the village. The shopkeeper said with pride, "This girl's something else. She sends money every month for her father's medicine." Later he asked her, "Is your family really struggling that much?" She nodded. And just like the first, he began to fade. Quietly, gently, without a trace. Amaya didn't cry, but that night she sat alone by her window. The city lights blazed outside like daylight, but inside her, it was as dark as the bottom of a well. She didn't understand. Why did they leave when she told the truth? Why did her silence scare them less than her honesty? Was it because people only wanted to love someone with a spotless past? Someone who had never wandered, never gone hungry for 3 days straight, never slept beneath a leaky roof? Was loving a girl who once lived in a torn-up tent something to be ashamed of? After the third time, she stopped opening her heart. She learned silence, learned to smile when someone asked, "Where were you born?" She'd simply reply, "I grew up with my mother." No mention of the village, no mention of her father, no mention of the house that collapsed in the rain. But every night, when she came back to her room, she was still that girl. The one who walked barefoot to school, who fetched water, who went hungry for 3 days so her parents could have porridge with their medicine. No one knew. No one needed to. And in that silence, Amaya buried her dream of love. No one killed it. It just died from being seen as a mistake. Chapter 5. The Strangest Marriage Proposal. One quiet afternoon, just as Amaya returned to her tiny room after a long shift, her phone rang. It was her mother, but her voice didn't sound like it usually did. "Amaya, come home. Something's happened. Something strange." Amaya pressed for answers, but her mother only said, "Your father said, come back as soon as you can. Don't be afraid. Just come. You'll understand when you're here." 3 days later, Amaya sat on a creaky old bus, heading back to the village she once left with a heart full of dreams. Now she returned with a heart cracked open and a quiet storm of questions. When she stepped into the old house, her mother was waiting. On the wooden table sat a thick brown envelope, sealed with care. Beside it, a large basket full of rice, cooking oil, soap, flour, and medicine. She hadn't seen this much inside their home in years. Her father sat in silence, his face solemn. He pushed the envelope toward her and said, "Read it." Amaya opened the letter. The handwriting was precise, blue ink, each line clear and deliberate. "To Miss Amaya Kalechi, my name is Elijah Olerin. I am aware of your circumstances and that of your family. I am a 60-year-old man, single. I own a home, land, and a stable business in Accra. I am not seeking romantic love. I am seeking a woman who is sincere, grounded, and wise. I would like to marry you. I promise to take care of you, your parents, and cover all medical and living expenses, if you agree to be my wife. Please do not be afraid. I do not need a beautiful girl. I need a kind one." Amaya's hands trembled. "What is this?" she whispered. Her mother broke down in tears. Tears Amaya couldn't quite place. Were they of relief or fear? 3 days ago, her mother said, someone brought the letter. They didn't say much, just handed us the gifts and the letter. Said this was only a small gesture, just the beginning. Her father cleared his throat. "Do you know who Elijah is?" he asked. "He's from our village. Left when he was young. Now, he's one of the wealthiest men in Accra. Owns land, cars, has people working for him, but never married." Amaya felt the ground beneath her shift. "But why me?" she asked. "I've never met him. I don't know anyone named Elijah." Her father looked into her eyes. Maybe, because you're the one he chose. She shook her head. No, this isn't love. This is a transaction. He didn't reply. Her mother took her hand, voice trembling. Amaya, you've carried this family for too long. If this is an opportunity, not just for you, but for all of us, then… She choked up, didn't finish the sentence. Amaya looked at the letter again. 60 years old, a stranger, marriage, in exchange for security. A storm raged inside her. Part of her wanted to tear the letter apart. Part of her wondered if this was fate. That night she didn't sleep. She sat by the window, looking up at the village sky. No streetlights, just stars. And only one question echoed in her mind. If this is the only way out, do I have the courage to walk through it? Chapter 6. A Father's Illness. The Price of Freedom. 3 days after the proposal letter arrived, Amaya still hadn't given her answer. She spent each night wide awake, watching her mother mend the old curtain, her brother Joshua counting raindrops falling from the leaky roof, her father, thin, pale, silent, trying to hide coughs that grew harsher by the day. No one said a word. They were waiting for her decision. But that silence pressed on her chest, heavier with every passing hour. One afternoon, while helping her mother sort through boxes under the table, Amaya stumbled across a small, dusty wooden box. Her mother said, "That's just old paperwork, sweetheart. Probably nothing important." But inside, at the very bottom, was a folded sheet of paper. Its color different from everything else. It was a medical report. She picked it up, reading every line. Halfway through, her hands went slack. Diagnosis: severe heart valve disease. Recommendation: immediate surgery. Estimated cost: 6,200 cedis. Amaya collapsed to the floor. She kept holding the paper, her mind blank. She had no idea how long she sat there. Her father had never said a word. Her mother had just kept smiling every day. But now she understood. She understood why her father would lie down as soon as he got home. Why the coughing fits kept getting worse. Why some days he would shiver violently even under the burning sun. He was quietly dying, all to spare her the worry. That night, Amaya sat in darkness, lights off. Her father came in, sat down beside her, holding a glass of water. He spoke softly, barely more than a breath. "I don't want you to feel forced, Amaya. If you don't want to marry Elijah, just say no. I won't blame you." She looked at him. "You're sick, Dad. I know now." He looked away. "I just want you to have a different kind of life. A life where you don't have to give up everything, like your mother did." Amaya swallowed hard, fighting tears, her throat raw and tight. "I don't want to lose you." He smiled, a tired, gentle smile. "I don't want to lose you either, Amaya." That night, she sat down to write a letter. Not a love letter, but a letter of acceptance. If this marriage is the price I must pay to save my father, to ease my mother's worries, to give Joshua a new chance, then I accept. The next morning, her mother walked out of her room to find Amaya kneeling before the family altar. She wore a freshly washed white shirt, hair neatly combed. Her hand rested gently on a sealed envelope. Her mother choked back tears. "You've made your choice?" Amaya nodded. "It's not that I'm not afraid. It's that I can't bear to lose all of you, just to hold on to a dream of my own." Chapter 7. A Wedding Without a Heart. The wedding came faster than Amaya had expected. She didn't prepare much. She didn't hope for anything either. Everything happened like a ritual. Like a funeral, really. Only this time, it was her heart being buried. That morning, a sleek black car pulled up to the village gate. 2 men in crisp white shirts stepped out, carrying a wedding dress, makeup, and a set of red silk scarves for the traditional rites. They didn't speak much, just bowed politely, then entered the house. Amaya sat still as her mother combed her hair. Each stroke of the comb came with a teardrop landing on her shoulder. "I'm sorry for everything," her mother whispered. Amaya gripped her mother's hand, saying nothing. She knew if she opened her mouth, the tears would pour and never stop. The wedding dress was not extravagant. A simple white gown, trimmed with lace at the wrists and hem. But on Amaya, it felt heavy, like silk chains. Her father, dressed in his traditional robe, stood waiting outside, his face stiff. Joshua, still silent as he'd been for weeks. But this time, his eyes were different. Not helpless, grateful. The villagers came in crowds, some curious, some just here for the food. Whispers floated through the air. "She married a rich man, huh? He's old, 60, they say. Well, the family's poor. What other choice did she have?" Amaya heard it all. But she didn't respond. She just stared at her feet, then looked up at her parents. A reminder to herself. This isn't about me. The ceremony was held in the village hall, a space once used for town meetings, now draped in white ribbons and balloon garlands. Chairs lined in 2 neat rows. The scent of jasmine and sweet wine floated in the air. And then, the groom appeared, Elijah Olerin. The man she had never met before walked in wearing a tailored gray suit, silver hair, a slight stoop in his back. His face was aged but calm, not cruel as she'd imagined. And in his eyes, not softness, but something else. Respect. Amaya rose to meet him, her hands ice cold. The village band played, off-key, unsynchronized. But the drums, the flutes, and clapping hands filled the room with life. The officiant stepped forward, his voice steady. "Amaya Kalechi, do you take Elijah Olerin as your husband? To live together in love and care, through wealth and poverty, in sickness and in health, until death parts you?" She closed her eyes, one deep breath, and then, "I do." The hall erupted in applause. Her mother wept. Her father bowed his head. Joshua looked away. Only Amaya stood still, eyes still closed, because she couldn't look at the man who had just become her husband. And she couldn't recognize the girl in the mirror anymore. The ceremony ended. No one saw her cry. But that night, as she sat in the car, driving away from her village, Amaya looked back one last time. She saw the small house, her parents standing together, hand in hand. She saw Joshua on the front steps, eyes red, staring at the ground. And she whispered to herself, "I gave up myself to keep that roof standing." Chapter 8. Wedding night. A stranger steps out of the bathroom. The car carrying Amaya away from the village left, just as the sun dipped into dusk. The sky turned a deep orange, bleeding into purple, as if someone had pulled a velvet curtain over her homeland, whispering, "It's done. There's no way back." Elijah sat beside her, calm as ever, just like during the wedding. He didn't ask questions, didn't reach for her hand, just stared straight ahead, as if he too was swallowing something too heavy to say out loud. The car turned onto a paved road, smooth and endless, and up ahead stood a 3-story mansion. Tall black gates, warm lights glowing along both sides of the driveway, illuminating manicured trees like a fairy tale. Amaya held her breath. She had never seen a place like this. Everything was elegant, polished, luxurious, and utterly unfamiliar. A far, far cry from the leaking roof, muddy floors, and damp firewood of her childhood home. A housekeeper opened the front door. Elijah gave her a respectful nod and gestured, "Please, after you." The house was silent. No voices, no footsteps. The marble floor gleamed like glass. Oil paintings lined the walls. Dark wooden shelves held rows of expensive books. Moonlight poured through tall windows, leaving a silver trail across the carpet. "Your room is upstairs," Elijah said softly. "We'll share a room, but I won't touch you. Not unless you want me to. Do whatever helps you feel safe." Amaya nodded, still said nothing. When she stepped into the master bedroom, her chest tightened. The room was pristine white, the bed massive, like a stage, silken pillows, floor-length curtains, a vanity by the window. Everything was beautiful and cold. Elijah gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll take a shower first. You should rest. You must be exhausted." She nodded again, still mute. The bathroom door closed. The sound of running water began. Soft, steady. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the hem of her dress. Her heart raced. Her throat tightened. She had never shared a bed with a man, never even touched one. And now, her husband was nearly 40 years her senior. Time passed slowly. 10 minutes, 20, nearly an hour. The water kept running. But no other sound. She grew anxious. Was something wrong? She stood, hesitated, reached for the bathroom door, and then it opened. But the man who stepped out wasn't Elijah as she had seen him before. In front of her stood a younger man, maybe in his early 30s. Tall, broad shoulders, wet skin glistening under the light, dark hair dripping over his forehead, a towel wrapped around his waist. No wrinkles, no stoop, no signs of age. His face unfamiliar, but his voice. "Amaya," he said, deep and steady. "I'm Elijah." She froze. No, that's not possible." He took one step forward, hands raised in peace. "Please, don't be afraid." But she backed away until her spine hit the wall. "Who are you? Where is my husband? Where is the man I married?" The stranger didn't move. His eyes stayed soft, but firm. "I am the man you married." The air grew thick. She couldn't hear the water anymore, or the wind. Only her heartbeat, pounding like a drum in her ears. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. "Stay away from me," she gasped. "I don't know who you are. What is this? Some kind of trick? A scam?" He stayed silent, then spoke calmly. "It's not a joke, not a trick. It's the truth. But it's a truth. You're not ready to understand yet." She shouted. "I gave up everything. I married an old man. I said yes. I gave up my freedom for my family. And now you're telling me, you're that man?" He nodded. And just as she turned to flee, he said quietly but firmly, "I'm the one you promised to care for, old or young. I'm the one who wrote you the letter, and I'm the one who saw the light in you before you even knew it was there." Amaya stood frozen, and in that moment, her heart broke open. Again. Chapter 9. A confession and a test of the heart. Amaya didn't remember when she had sat down. Her legs had gone weak. Her hands were trembling. She couldn't bring herself to look at the man standing before her. The man who claimed to be her husband, but looked decades younger than Elijah. For what felt like a lifetime, neither of them spoke. Finally, the man, Elijah, walked over. Not too close. He sat on the floor across from her. He didn't reach for her, didn't beg, didn't defend himself. He just began in a slow, steady voice. "I am Elijah, but not the Elijah you or your village believed me to be." Amaya said nothing. She just stared, confused, shaken. He let out a long breath. "My grandfather. He was the man you once helped, at that corner shop." Her eyes widened. The memory rushed back like a flood, a cold, rainy night. An old man entered the shop, soaking wet, hands trembling, trying to count coins for a loaf of bread. But he didn't have enough. People pushed him out. She had stepped forward, covered the rest, poured him a cup of hot tea, sat with him until the rain stopped. She had forgotten, but Elijah hadn't. That night he came home and said, "He'd met an angel without wings," Elijah said, his eyes locked gently on hers. "A girl with nothing, except a heart big enough to hold up the sky." Amaya swallowed hard. Her throat was dry as dust. "Before he passed, he left me with one wish. Find that girl, and if you're lucky, marry her." Elijah paused, then continued. "I laughed when I first heard that. I didn't believe in arranged love. I believed love had to be free, not something owed." Amaya looked at him. her guard still up, but something in her gaze had softened. But then, I started learning about you. I found your scholarship application. I listened to stories from your old classmates. I met a teacher who once taught you, and I was shaken. His voice grew quiet. I'd never met anyone who lived like you, always for others, always giving, never asking. I didn't feel worthy, but still I wanted to know. Could someone like you love a man who had nothing to offer but a true heart? Amaya frowned. So, you disguised yourself as an old man? He nodded. I had to be sure. I had to know. If I wasn't young, or handsome, or charming, would you still choose me? Or just the security I could offer? Amaya gave a hollow laugh. And you thought that was fair to me? Elijah was silent. She went on, I sacrificed myself. I was terrified. I stepped into this marriage like stepping into a cage, and now I find out the man I married isn't who I thought he was. He looked into her eyes. I know, and I'm sorry. Silence hung between them once more. Then Elijah placed a hand over his chest. Still sitting on the floor. Still keeping his distance. But my feelings were never fake. Every word I said, when I wore that old face, was true. I'm not asking you to love me. I just wanted you to know the truth. Amaya closed her eyes. Tears spilled quietly down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. She once thought the worst kind of pain was being left behind. But now she realized the worst kind of pain is not knowing what's real and what isn't. She stood, walked to the door. Elijah didn't stop her. Just before she stepped out, she paused. Didn't turn around, only said, "Thank you for being real." And then she left. Without another word, Chapter 10. Anger, understanding, and forgiveness. Amaya didn't leave the mansion that night. She didn't know why. Maybe she was too tired. Maybe she had nowhere else to go. But deeper than that, maybe part of her heart was still waiting for an answer. She slept on the couch in a small room at the end of the hallway. The door closed tight. No one disturbed her. The next morning, a housekeeper knocked gently. They brought her clean clothes, a warm breakfast, and a message. Mr. Elijah wishes not to disturb you, but if you need anything, just call. Amaya said nothing. She wasn't hungry, but she sat and ate. She didn't know what to do, but she wandered the house anyway, studying the paintings, the books, the plants, even the tiny scratch on the stair rail, as if they might whisper something to her. By late afternoon, she found a room with a large window facing the garden. She sat there, in silence. Inside her was a storm. She was angry, very angry. Angry at being tested. Angry at being part of a game where she didn't know if she was a pawn or the player. Angry because she had trusted a promise, written in the shaky hand of an old man, only to find out it was crafted by a younger one, hidden behind a mask. But then she understood. She saw the truth too. The man, Elijah, as flawed as he was in method, was not flawed in feeling. He had never disrespected her, never touched her without permission, never used her desperation, even though he easily could have. She remembered the words he spoke while still in disguise. You deserve a different kind of life. You're not small because you're poor. It's because you're poor that you've grown larger than anyone I've ever met. She remembered his eyes. No pity, no pride, just quiet respect. Her throat tightened, because in her whole life, no one had ever looked at her like that. That night, she walked into the dining room. Elijah was already there, wearing simple clothes, no makeup, no disguise, no pretending. When he saw her, he stood, but didn't step closer. Amaya sat down across from him. She didn't smile, but she wasn't cold. She spoke, steady and clear. You know, there was a moment I thought you were the worst person I'd ever met. Elijah nodded, didn't defend himself. She went on. But now I'm not so sure. I don't know whether to call you a liar or the bravest man I've ever met. I don't know how long I'll be mad at you. But I do know this. I believed every word you said when you were pretending to be old. She took a breath. And if those words were true, then I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry a wound in my heart from someone who once saw my worth. Elijah looked at her. In his eyes was something like gratitude, but deeper. She stood up. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'm ready. He nodded. I know, and I'll wait. Amaya turned and walked out. Not lighter, not yet, but at least truthfully. Chapter 11. Love without a mask. A week passed. The mansion was unusually quiet. No one spoke of what had happened. No one mentioned the wedding. No one talked about age or the face that had been replaced. There were only quiet meals. Mornings where Amaya rose early to make tea. Evenings where Elijah sat in the corner, reading by soft lamplight. They lived like strangers who had agreed to coexist. Not too close, not too far. Sharing space, sharing silence. Nothing more. Until one afternoon, Amaya asked, "Do you still have the disguise?" Elijah looked up from his book. "I do, every piece. Do you want to see it again?" She nodded softly. "I want to look at him. The man I once promised to care for, even though I didn't love him." Elijah paused, then stood, made a call. An hour later, the living room was transformed. A makeup team arrived. They laid open cases on the table. Dark foundation, a silver wig, wrinkle molds, hollowed cheeks, chapped lips, a pair of reading glasses. Amaya sat quietly, watching. Layer by layer, they rebuilt the man she had once married. The youthful face, strong, calm, confident, slowly faded beneath folds of age, creases of time. And when Elijah opened his eyes again, stood, and walked toward her, her tears came uninvited. Not from fear, not from pain, but because she realized she had missed that face. She stepped forward, touched his cheek, the deep lines across his forehead, the short, silver beard. And then she cried. Elijah, or rather, the old Elijah, spoke gently through the mask. "I'm still me, whether it's this face or any other. But now, I no longer expect you to call me husband. I only hope you're no longer afraid to look at me." Amaya shook her head, held his hand. "I was never afraid. I just never believed I was worthy of being loved. And I definitely never imagined that someone could choose me, knowing all the broken pieces inside." She looked into those weathered eyes and whispered, "But now, I choose again. Not for my family, not for my father, not because of promises or gifts, but because I finally see that behind every mask, love was the only thing that was ever real." Elijah stood still. Then slowly, he reached up and peeled away each layer, one by one, quietly, like shedding a life that had already been lived. And when his real face returned, young, peaceful, warm, she embraced him. No hesitation, no anger, no questions. Just arms, finally reaching. And for the first time in her life, Amaya felt chosen. Not because she sacrificed, not because she proved herself, but because she was simply herself. Ending, a note to the heart. Some love stories don't begin with flowers. They begin with pain. No first date, just a promise, whispered through tears. No sweet confession, just a vow, written in sacrifice. Elijah didn't need a perfect girl. He needed someone brave enough to love, even when that love might not be returned. And Amaya, she didn't need a man who was young, rich, or charming. She needed someone real enough to stop hiding behind age, status, or masks. Because sometimes, true love isn't what we see with our eyes. It's what we dare to feel with our hearts when no one else is watching. If you've ever chosen love out of courage, not conditions, if you've ever been judged for your past, your poverty, your origin, then you understand Amaya. This story was meant for you. Leave a comment. I choose love without the mask. And don't forget to subscribe to Tales of Black, where every scar deserves a voice, and every soul, no matter how long forgotten, deserves to be seen again in the light.